Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and in today's video what we're going to be doing is this right here. So if that looks interesting to you guys, please carry on and watch the video. And also one more thing before we get into the video, if you enjoy what I do here, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. It really helps me out and lets me know you enjoy the video. But with all that out of the way, let's get into that video.
Okay, so for painting up these miniatures here, these Casterly Rock Honor Guard, is I'm going to be using these two miniatures here as my examples for the paint jobs, as these two have the elements over top of all of the miniatures here, because what we're doing of course is painting up the entirety of the unit, which is 13 models, and rather than try to show that on screen, it'd sort of be a bit clunky and awkward, and probably be out of focus a lot more times than I care to admit. So I'm just going to stick with these two here, which have pretty much all of the elements that we want to cover here, so I'll be switching back and forth between them on what part is more irrelevant at the time. But as you can see, what I'm doing here is I've got a black prime base coat, and then I'm coming in with a dry brush of a metallic color. For me, I'm using oily steel here, which is a very dark sort of gunmetal color, and I'm dry brushing the entirety of the model because this is our first step. I'm not worried about where it's going. I just want to give the entirety of the model a good overcoat of this here, and specifically of course we're trying to be hitting all of our armor pieces, so giving a good overall dry brush. And the reason why I'm dry brushing it here is because these guys, the Honor Guard, they sort of seem like they should be veterans and these hardened warriors, so I'm doing this to try and make the armor look a little bit more weathered. So rather than applying it as a simple base coat but dry brushing it on, it'll give us some more interesting texture and make it look like it's a little bit more weathered. That's my theory behind it anyway, so hopefully it'll come out like that. Then once we have all of that metallic area complete, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a skin color, and this is to paint up the captain. Specifically just the captain, as he's the only one that has enough of his sort of face exposed. The other guards have this very thin slit that you could paint in if you wanted to. I myself think it was just a little too narrow of an area to really bother about, and it's always going to be in shadow on the entirety of the piece anyway, so I thought I'm just going to stick to the captain with this, as the other ones just don't have really enough. But totally you could if you wanted to. I would suggest painting up the faces on all the other ones first and get that in there into that bit, and then go the dry brushing over top, as it'd be a little bit easier and you'd have a little bit less to worry about. Then once we have the face complete, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with some dirt spatter here. This here is a dark brown, and I'm going to be using to paint all of the sword scabbards for this. So this is entirely over all of the models. All of our Honor Guard here have these scabbards and belts on them in various places, so we want to go in and pick all of these out at this time. Now they'll have them in sort of different places, some of them will be a little bit harder to get to, so don't worry too much about that. It's just going for an overall coat, and this is a nice dark black, as well as specifically for this model here, as he's the banner bearer. I'm also only painting the handle for the banner to fly from as well in the exact same color. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in now with a flesh wash. This here is reikland fleshshade, and I'm just going to be applying it of course to our exposed face area, and that is for our Honor Guard here, our captain of the actual guard itself. Now if you were doing it on all of the little slits in the other models there, that thin area, you'd want to put that in as well. I would recommend probably doing that as well before attempting doing any of the dry brushing steps. But if you're doing it like me and just worrying about the captain here, then now is the perfect time to do that. Just of course watch out for any pulling. Then once I have that wash drying, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place another wash on as well. This here is going to be strong tone. This is a brown wash, so anything like Agrax Earthquake or any like brown wash like that, I'm going to be applying to all of the brown areas we just applied to again. Of course too, we're also still making sure that we want to avoid any pooling, and we do not want it to go over any of our metallic areas, as we're going to apply a different wash to that a little bit later on. So just a minute going on. Now specifically for these models here, is there's actually very little brown areas. It's only basically the straps and the scabbards on them, as this one here is the only one who has sort of any other bit of wood on here, and that's to of course hold his banner. Then once we have that wash completely dry, I'm going to come in with some kobold skin here. This is a lot lighter than our neutral flesh tone that I was using before, and I'm just going to be doing a quick highlight. So this is of course just picking out areas like the ridge of the brow and the tip of the nose, sort of the high point to the cheeks, the chin, just little areas like that. Of course using a nice fine tip on my brush, or switching to a finer point brush if you need to here to pick up these nice little details. And this is the only model I'm going to be worried about this for, because it's the only one that has enough of the face exposed to highlight. Then once we have that complete, what we're going to come and do is one of the harder parts of the miniature itself, and that is to do the red details. Now for this I'm going to be using mephiston red for this. It's got a good nice overall coverage. It's also got a nice deep rich color as well that I want for my Lannister red. And of course I want to be painting the areas that we have any flowing capes and sort of tabards and that sort of thing on them, their loincloth sort of area. Now these guard veterans, they all have a little bit of cloth on them everywhere, so you can spend a little bit of time picking them out. And as you of course know, with the other model that I was painting up here, we also had the banner, so we want to do that as well. But one other area I want to point out focus to is I'm gonna be painting all the inside of the shields in the red color as well. I'm not going to leave them just silver. I want that nice detail in there to really give them that Lannister effect and show that they've got that value and that worth by kitting out their awesome guardsmen here with some really ornate armor and giving them that little extra color there will help set them out in your army and make them look super cool on the table. Then once we have that all complete, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with a wash, and this here is going to be a black wash. Now for this, I'm going to place entirely over everything now that we haven't applied a wash to before, so of course avoiding our skin areas and the areas we placed that brown wash onto. But it's not too much of a worry if you go onto that sort of area. All it'll do is darken it down a bit, but the main point here is we want to give it a good coverage over top of our red and our metallic areas to really dull them down, and it's going to really help enhance those shadows as drying. But of course, one of the things when you're always applying a wash is you want to be careful of pooling, especially when I'm applying a lot like I am here. I know definitely do end up with pooling on a few of them because we're painting up 13 miniatures here, so it's always hard to watch a lot of them all at once, but keeping a nice even coat will help mitigate that somewhat. So just remember to apply it in sort of smaller amounts. You want big amount. The way I do it is I place a big amount onto my brush, really load it up, and then I spread it around the entirety of the miniature, really spreading it out to get it over all of the pieces before coming back in with another sort of dollop of the wash there, so you get a full coverage of the entirety of the piece and sort of helps lessen the amount of any pooling. Then once we have that completely dry, I'm going to come in with another hard part of the miniatures to paint, and that is going to be all of the sort of ornate sort of filigree over the entirety of the piece. And that is, of course, we want to be painting in gold. I'm using Retributor armor for this. There's a lot of gold you could use here, but totally up to you what you want to do, but I'm going with a nice deep rich gold with the Retributor armor. And of course we want to spend a little bit of time and really help with the art. One of the tips I can give you with painting in these miniatures is when you come to those really fine bits of detail, is to use more of the side of your brush than the tip of your brush, especially on those nice bits of intricate detail on the shields. You want to just sort of scrape the edge of the tip across your brush, and it'll help pick it out a little bit easier and sort of catch it a bit more, sort of like in a dry brushing motion, but having your full effect of paint on there. And it's a matter of picking out all of those bits you're going to be excited for and feel that you have enough time for, especially on these models here as they're quite ornate and fancy. The amount of detail you want to put in is totally up to you. I don't paint in all of the filigree detail. I paint in the bits that are going to look nice and effective on the table, especially from a distance. That's going to help catch your eye. So then once you have those bits of filigree you want painted up and you're happy with that, what I'm going to do is just on specifically the banner bearer himself here, is I'm going to be painting up the trim and the lion on that. I'm going to be using Averland Sunset for this. This is a yellow, sort of a goldenish yellow colour, as it of course is the Lannister, so you want to give them that golden yellow colour. And the reason why I'm going with that rather than the gold itself, what you could totally do, is I think it feels a little bit weird to have sort of a metallic on a piece itself. I know I've done it in the past where I've just used the gold on there as well as the banner bearers when I'm using it on their armor as well to sort of signify their fanciness, but for a historical sort of sense you couldn't really get much golden thread, and they wouldn't definitely use it on probably banner bearers and going out and fighting war. They would be using sort of more color, just sort of straight colors, than using fancy things like golden colour for that sort of stuff. So that's why I'm going with the yellow here, to try and make it sort of seem a little bit more authentic to the colours itself and what they would have on the battlefield. Okay, so now one thing I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be going back to our flesh wash here, and rather than use it like on the skin like we did just before, is I'm going to be using this over all of our golden parts that we just painted up. And this is going to help give the gold a nice warm rich tone and really help set our golden pits apart from if we were to give it a black wash, to really help warm it up and give it that really sort of authentic gold feeling and look. It's just a nice easy way. It gives it something different by giving it that flesh tone wash. Totally up to you if you want to do this, of course, but I like to give that gold a nice warm tone and that nice reddish tone to give it an interesting look onto the actual gold itself, and giving it a nice sort of more authentic sort of golden look. Then once we have that complete, what I'm doing is coming back in with our original red, and I'm just going to be using this for the highlights. Now, you could totally do a couple of steps of highlights here. You could go up one tone lighter with the red after this step here to give them even more of a vibrant highlight. I'm going to keep them relatively dark. I feel like they're sort of this, you know, of course, really elite unit, and they wouldn't have time to keep everything sort of immediately pristine into the brightest sort of version, and I want to give them that really crimson Lannister red. My other members of my army for my Lannisters, they definitely do have that brighter sort of feel to them, but I want to give them sort of this more harsher, grittier tone as they're the more elite unit, so I want to keep that in the darker sort of realm. That's totally up to me, of course, but depending on what you want to do, you may want to go one step lighter, or just like me, use that original red colour, which is still going to be nice and vibrant and show up in the highlights. It's just what you feel like you would go rather than what I would go here, so I thought I'd just give you that suggestion out here. But for me, I'm just going back up to that original colour we started with. Then once we have all that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with shining silver. Now this is a very, very bright silver, and I'm going to be, of course, using this for the highlights. So I'm going to be focusing on mainly all of the upper areas that are going to be catching the sun as well for this bit, sort of like sharp points of contact with the light would be hitting. So there's some nice filigree still left on the shoulder that I didn't paint in the gold colour, as I'm going to actually pick these out with the silver. So you've got two different colours. You've got some nice silver filigree, and then you've got some gold filigree on the models to give them that sort of different sort of look and show that not everything is completely filigree in gold, because I was sort of getting a little sick of filigreeing everything in gold. So varying it up a little bit helped me keep my sanity a little bit on these nice pieces, but totally up to you what to do here. If you went for a lot more golden filigree, you wouldn't have to do so much of the step, but for me, I've got a little bit more to do because I want to pick out some of those other areas on the model. Then once we have that complete, I'm coming in with a nice bright gold, and of course this is to highlight our golden colours. And since we've got a lot of gold on these miniatures, you're going to be using quite a bit of it. And these models, since I've painted them with this nice sort of golden lion head on them, I think it's really awesome and effective. I actually copied that from the box artwork. They have these nice golden heads, and I thought that was a really cool, interesting idea, so I wanted to go with that too. So you've got some nice areas to pick out with the gold here, and as well, you can see with those nice sharpest points, I'm just using the edge of my brush to catch those points of highlight. It's going to really help let everything stand out, and I'm not giving everything an entirety of a highlight, just the things that are sort of hitting the nice highest point of the sun. And of course, with all that highlighted up, that is our final step, so we can see how these miniatures came out into those nice glamour shots, shall we? And with all that complete, we have finally finished painting up our Casterly Rock Honor Guards. So I hope this video has been helpful for you guys, whether you want to follow along with what I did here, or just use this video as some inspiration in painting up your own miniatures. And with all that nice filigree, and giving them that interesting looking, sort of veteran style look with the dry brushing and the armor, I think we've got a nice effective pieces for the gaming table. And I hope you guys have found this interesting and useful for yourselves. But with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.